everyone, my name is Vina, aka Miss WOC Reader, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm coming at you with my May reading wrap up. May was a crazy month, it was a hectic month. I didn't get a lot of reading done at the end because life happens and I had stuff going on that I need to take care of. And I was reading something, but it was like a little bit slower and it just wasn't getting me in the right reading space, and I didn't want to fall into a slump, so I had to kind of switch up my reading routine again. But I did get some books read. The first book that I read was Book of Night by Holly Black. I did a solo video about this where I was just talking about what I didn't really like about it. To sum it up, this was boring. I feel like Holly Black decided that adult fantasy equals lengthy for no damn reason, even though the page count was actually short. It's just that it droned on and on and on without anything happening. There was little world building. It wasn't interesting, engaging. There was nothing to keep you flipping the pages. Had this not been audiobook, I would not have continued. Now I can say I read it, I stepped outside my comfort zone, and I will be stepping right back in my comfort zone, away from these overhyped white fantasies. So the next book that I read was Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. This one was sitting on my Kindle for like 2 years, so I was happy to finally get to it. I read it because of Uncle Rick's read along that is hosted by Bree from the Lock Booktician and Nicole from Who Picked This Book. And I didn't really like Tristan Strong. I felt it was way too long for middle grade. It was almost 500 pages. That is lengthy for middle grade. You have to, I'm looking at it from like the child's perspective, not the adult, because I would have never read something that long as a child, and I kind of struggle to read something that long as an adult, and kids don't have a lot of time, so lengthy books take longer, and I feel like at times there was nothing really like there to make you want to turn the pages. I did parts of it via audiobook, which is the only reason why I finished in time for the Uncle Rick live show. I didn't like that it kind of operated from a message of to be black is to constantly experience trauma. People can disagree with me if they want to, but I don't feel like we need to sum up the black experience to just our trauma. Not every even of like the trauma that I experienced just has to do with being black. Some of it just has to do with human life in general. Some of it has to do with life in America. And every moment of life is not trauma, and I don't think we need to brace ourselves to just be constantly expecting drama. To be constantly expecting trauma. And Kristen was going through a lot. It did try to add a little levity in it, but where they tried to add a little bit of levity fell so flat to me. I didn't get a lot of whimsy from this story. I really disliked Gum Baby. I felt like Gum Baby was like caricature type. It felt like the caricature of the sassy black woman, especially like listening to parts of the audiobook where the narrator's like using this sassy black woman voice, and I wasn't really feeling it. Some of the jokes like didn't land. It was getting really annoying, and I don't see myself continuing the series because there was just nothing to keep me constantly engaged. I do have another one of Kwame Mbalia's books that I do plan on reading, and I will give that a fair shot. Also, something to note is that this wasn't like his brainchild. It is a book. It did come from a book packager, so that was something in my mind as well, like how much of it was his writing and how much of it was their idea of how the story should go. So that is something that I kept in mind as well, so I'm not judging him based solely off of how this book fell. The next one that I read was Flood City by Daniel Jose Alder. I listened to the audiobook fully for this one, and fun fact, his wife did the narration. I thought she did a great job. Really was engaged. This is like a dystopian story about like the last city on Earth after Earth is flooded. Of course, there were some elite white people who had a heads up and knew Earth was flooded, so they took off in their little spaceship, and now they're trying to come back and repopulate because there are people living on Flood City, and despite everything that's going on, they are still somewhat thriving. And this was a fun adventure. It was a quick listen. It also had this like little newspaper scattered throughout that I really enjoyed. And it's funny seeing like how at the end how the people took back the newspaper to free it from the propaganda. So I really enjoyed Flood City. I would definitely check out more of Daniel Jose Alder. The next book that I read was Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl by Joya Goffney, and sleeping on Joya Goffney. She is such a great writer. She did in this book what I wish a lot of YA authors would do. And like I said in a recent video, I want to see more family representation on page. She did that so well here. She managed to show family members from all different perspectives, from that fun aunt who kind of lets you do your own thing to like stricter parents where like our main character is kind of like a daddy's girl, but then she realized like, you know, her mom has her reasons for the way she is, and they kind of come to an understanding. Like, I appreciate that nuanced like perspective when we're dealing with family versus some of the other books I read where I don't feel like the parents got enough time on page to fully explore. This also dealt with religion very well, which is another thing that I had talked about in my video about family. I like to see nuanced perspectives of religion because a lot of us do have some kind of faith that we follow, or spirituality, or something that we hold on to, and I'd like to see that. I like to see more of that on page. I thought she did a really great job in showing the different nuances of that. Like, it's not just all good or all bad, there's in between. And not everything that the church says is great, but there are things that you can appreciate about the church. Great Black friendship representation, very well done. I like the dynamic between the three characters. So in Confessions of a Alleged Good Girl, like, the main character is a preacher's daughter, and she's really trying to have sex with her boyfriend, but it's like her body is rejecting her from having sex, and she finds out that she has this disorder called vaginismus. And you know, her two unlikely people from her church, like two unlikely teens from her church, help her set out to try and get dilators so she can fix herself. And I learned something new because I never knew what vaginismus was before. And I just thought it was a great story all around, because like Joya Goffney touched on so many different things in this book really well with a lot of nuance, which I really appreciated. The next book that I read was The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, and this was an okay fantasy. I'm sitting at like a 3.5 with it. There were some things that I liked about it and some things that really fell flat for me. Like, it was multiple POV, which I do struggle with in fantasy, and I don't think that she ever stepped outside the archetypes of who she set the characters out to be. Like, I really like the Jinn magic, and I like the touches and nods to her culture. I like that the writing, like the language, was easy to understand. It didn't feel overly complicated. It was very simple and straightforward, but at the same time, it was the simple and straightforwardness of the plot overall that made this like a less exciting read. Because, like I said, she never really stepped outside and did anything special with it. Everybody was very straightforward. There weren't high stakes. Even with the fight scenes, it was like meh. Which I've been noticing, fight scenes are very hard for a lot of writers to get down in fantasy. So that's definitely something that people need to study more to improve. Because there's just there wasn't enough in the fight scenes to keep me engaged. This is supposed to be a trilogy, but I don't see how this story can stretch across three books at all. Like I said, it was good, but it wasn't great. I don't feel like I have to read the rest of it to like absolutely know what's going on. And at the end of the book, I couldn't see like well, I don't know where it's going to go. I wonder if it's going to go here, 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 and here, that's what I want to feel when I'm reading a fantasy that is not a standalone. I want to be able to be like, I don't know what's going to happen in the next book. There's so many possibilities, and be hyped, and I just was not hyped for it. So then I was like feeling slumpy. I was reading an indie, which I still have not finished. It was kind of that one. Just, I don't think it's my reading taste, so I may or may not DNF. But it depends on how the next few pages read of that one. So I'm still working on that. But the next one that I read was Crimes of Passion by Jack Harbon, and it was my first book by this author. I do follow him on Twitter. He's hilarious. Definitely check him out. And I really, really enjoyed this one. It's an Audible original, novella's nice, sweet, and to the point. It follows these two rival podcasters who team up on this project because one of their longtime listeners, who was a great fan, her dying wish was to have them team up for the podcast. So they do this podcast series. Over time, they realize they're not so different. They develop some chemistry, and I thought it was really good. I don't usually listen to murder podcasts. My sister does. She loves them. But because she listens to them a lot, like I obviously listened to some and had kind of a gist of that. I think if that's your thing and you like romance, you're going to enjoy this one. It was overall a lot of fun and a great listen for an hour or so right before work. The last book that I read during the month was Finding Jupiter by Khalees Rowe. This one was one of my most highly anticipated books of 2022. I had been hyped for this book ever since I saw it on Picture Wars a couple of years ago, and there were some things that I found really cute about it. I did think that like our main characters had great chemistry. I thought I didn't mind so much the star-crossed lovers angle that it was pushing. It's just that at time it kind of slowed down the mystery element of the book. There was like this kind of issue they were trying to solve, and I don't feel like it was always paced well with that. And I liked the mystery part, but it did get a little rushed towards the end, even though I did enjoy the fallout. I don't like the old souls aspect that it was pushing, while at the same time it was clashing with like the new school aspects she was trying to push. So I find with a lot of YA, they feel written like they're for the adults and of that time period versus the teens of now, and this was another one that was feeling like that. It's one of the reasons why I DNF'd Love Radio, which vibes might be a little similar for if you're reading it back to back. I did not enjoy Love Radio. That one felt very try-hard, which is why I ended up DNFing it, because I'm like, I'm not going to force myself through what is going to be a 3-star. There was a little bit more instant chemistry through Finding Jupiter that kept me reading. Overall, I did like the characters. I did like the family dynamics, but I did not like the heavy pushing of pop culture. It was a little overboard and took away from the story, in my opinion. I like some light pop culture. I do feel like some is necessary, but the most of the pop culture in this book was very old and not stuff that the teens can relate to anyway. So it just didn't make sense. Even like the newer pop culture references were like Drake and Beyonce. Of course, very famous, very popular, but I'm like, how much are the kids standing them hardcore the way those of us who are a little bit older do? So I feel like the kids have different tastes, and those just aren't always acknowledged in YA. And there was heavy pushing of like old stuff like CDs and like, oh my gosh, CDs were forever ago. I don't even have a CD player anymore to play my CDs. CD players aren't cheap anymore, and they're harder to come by. So like having our main female character push like listening to CDs felt very weird. And then like there was a point in the book where the kids were having sex to Sade. I'm like, I didn't even know Sade till I was an adult. My dad is a music buff, okay, but he didn't really play Sade, and I'm just like, he didn't play like a lot of that adult contemporary type stuff. I know she has a great fan base that's really supportive, but I also know Sade is kind of one of those artists who drops her music, minds her business, and stays out of the way. More power to her. And I feel like she's more for the adult audience. Like, having sex with Sade is something that people who are about 40 would do versus these teen characters. And it was Sade on CD, so it made it feel like extra old, like 2000s at the latest. So that felt a little weird. I felt like they didn't need to be pushed as old souls to make a point. It felt more like it was pandering for the author and other people her age versus the teens. There's stuff in here that teens can enjoy, and more power to her for doing a launch event that was actually teen focused, because I also don't see that a lot in YA. But this was an okay book. I did like certain aspects of it, but I don't feel the need to reread it. So that's everything that I read during the month of May. I look forward to June. It's going to be a very busy month, but I have a lot of great reads ahead of me. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. Thanks so much for watching, and I will check in with you guys soon. Bye!